Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. Introduce members of the panel. In the boardroom is Mr. Robert Krause, and via Zoom is Mr. Richard Whitbread. My name is Stu McPherson. I'll be chairing the hearing today. For the assessment department, we have Ms. Kareem Darakani, and the administrative personnel today is Mr. Zachary Mohan. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony. Anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council. It's independent of it and the City Administration. Makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed, with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony, followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they so wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave, and the process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and makes its decisions. You'll receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. Just as information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 9 and 10 on our docket today. Mr. Mohan, would you please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Madam Assessor, please state your full name.
Kareem Darakani.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Trevor Smith.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Smith. You're here representing the owners of two properties, 911 Dugald and a property on Dawson Street North. And it's the amount of the assessed value only that we're dealing with today?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we will just deal with the properties as they're listed on the docket. So the first one we'll deal with is item 911 Dugald. So, Ms. Assessor, when you're ready, we'll hear your evidence, please.
Thank you. File number 24-3819, roll number 0605119800, address is 911 Dugald Road. We are defending the assessed value of $2,688,000 for the 2025 roll year based on the reference date of April 1, 2023. It consists of one building with one story, built in 2023, a wall height of 31, with a leasable area of 13,578 square feet. The land to plan area is 4.56. If I may turn your attention to page 8. We provided some map views showing its location. It is situated on the east side of the city in the Mission Industrial Area off of La Gémodière Boulevard. Aerial views are on page 9, as well as exterior photos on page 10, showing the loading bays. And an interior photo is provided on page 11. You will find our income workup on page 4. The 5 premises add up to 13,578 square feet with a blended rent of $10.65 per square foot, providing a potential rent of $144,557. We've reduced that by a vacancy loss of 3%, plus expenses at 3%, with the shortfall at $4 per square foot. This gives us the net operating income of $134,384. We've capitalized that at 5%, in which generates our capitalized value of $2,687,680, in which we round it up to our final value of $2,688,000. On page 3 has our rent comparables. They are actual net rents from the market in which our model is based off of. We've provided 5 rent comparables with the lease starting in 2018 to 2022. Area range of 2,000 to 3,300 square feet. Range of wall height from 15 to 27 feet. And year built of 1983 to 2005. You'll find our capitalization rates on page 6, in which provides the industrial range of 5.35 at the 20th percentile to 7.30 at the 80th percentile. Our cap rate is 5%. The subject is a small property with the 5 premises and brand new. We believe that a low cap rate lower than the 20th percentile is acceptable. Outliers like this one fall outside of our cap rate range. We feel that a low cap rate is acceptable due to low risk for a new build. There is no income and expense questionnaire provided due to a 2023 build. However, if I may bring your attention to page 12, we did provide a permit of the new construction declaring a value of $2,700,000. This shows the value of the property as willing to spend that much. Based on the evidence we provided, we believe that the assessed value of $2,688,000 to be fair and equitable, and ask for it to be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Questions for the assessor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the last item you mentioned there was the declared construction value, so cost to construct. That's not a direct translation to market value, is it?
As far as we can tell, they spent that much money, so it for us it means that it's of value.
Okay, I will leave that alone. I do have one correction to make, which I just picked up this morning, or I would have let you know earlier. So looking at page 1 of your brief there, the city has the wall height shown as 31 feet. And if you, I mean, it's apparent when you look at the photos or you're on site, but if you go to your page, I believe it's page 13. Let me just check here. Nope, not 13. 14, and you zoom in on the exterior elevations there, you can see that it indicates that the exterior wall height ranges between 18 and 24 feet because the roof line slopes from one side to the other. So the actual exterior max is 24 feet with the low at 18. Just wanted to note that. In selecting the comparable market leases, I'm assuming you were looking for wall height as one of your comparable items.
It was, unfortunately, it's difficult to find ones that have that high of a wall height.
Right, but so, and I don't want to belabor the point. That's not my purpose here. But again, in looking at your evidence of the as-built plans for the property, it's not actually 31 feet, is it? It's ranges between 18 and 24. Is that fair to say?
Indicated less, but I believe the majority of it was the 31 feet.
Okay, so I really don't want to spend a lot of time on this, and it's not it's not 31 feet, and it's not that the slope starts at 31 and goes to 18. It starts at 24 feet and goes to 18 on the low end, so it's never 31 feet. It ranges between 18 and 24. For the panel members, if you go on page 14 and you zoom in on the exterior elevations, you can see the slope of the roof line, and you can see the measurement indicating the lower end at 18 feet and a few inches and the upper end at 24 feet and a few inches. So it's not actually built to 31 feet. Anyway, I'll leave that alone. Again, I didn't want to spend that much time on that particular item.
Ask the applicant.
I'm sorry?
You're freezing up on me anyway.
Sorry, can you, Mr. Chair, can you see and hear me clearly now, or are we having technical issues?
You're a moment.
So you're...
No, is anyone else having technical?
I can't, I'm not hearing you very well. And you seem to be freezing. Your movements are very jerky of the screen.
I'm also having freezing, and the audio is going in and out.
How am I, Trevor? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine, Mr. Whitbread.
I think it's just you, Mr. Chair.
It's just my issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, you could help, Mr. Chair, if you turn off your video for a while. If you're okay with doing so.
Do you want me to leave the meeting and come back?
You can stay first. Like, I mean, it might be wise. What might help the connections if you turn off your video, but just keep your audio on naturally. That might solve the problem.
Okay. Stop the video.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you still hear me though?
Oh yeah, we can hear you, Crystal.
Okay. Sorry, Mr. Smith, you're questioning the assessor, and you just dealt with the wall height. So did you have further questions?
I do. I wanted to move on from that particular issue. Moving on to page number 3. So the lease comparables here. The first comparable, 1109 Wilkes Avenue, 27-foot wall height, built in 2005. This is located adjacent to Linden Woods and the IKEA retail area. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that would be, so it's a 3,000 plus square foot unit, but it's within a 2-building, large-scale, multi-tenant, high-end industrial complex. Is that correct? So not 13,000 square feet, but more like 100,000 80,000. I'm not sure what the total is. Is that fair to say?
In choosing our comparables, we wanted to have the individual premises be the comparables as the 5 premises.
Right, but it would be within the larger modern high cube flex warehouse that I'm describing. Is that correct?
I'm actually not too certain, to be honest.
Okay, and forgive me, I have to ask these questions, so it's not to, it's the format that we're given to do here. So that particular property would have fully paved loading court and storage area, as well as dock and grade loading. Is that accurate?
Again, I'm not too certain about the exact property you're referring to.
Yeah, that's fair. Number 2, that's located at Lajimoje and highway number 1. Is that correct? Niaqua?
Yes.
Okay, and then we have number 3 and number 4, 1365 Dougal and 88 Terracon. These are both within the Terracon Business Park in St. Boniface off of Dougal, correct?
Correct.
So that would be a large multi-building business park with flex warehouse / office space, dock and grade loading, fully paved, lots of parking, etc. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think those are all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Forgive me. I forgot the most important one. So capitalization rate, the city has used 5% for the particular subject. Is that largely based on age of construction?
Yes.
Okay, so when I go to page number 6 of the city's brief, as you said, the 20th and 80th percentile, it's all the same, whether single tenant or multi-tenant, A or B class. You have 5.35 to 7.3 as the typical range.
I'm sorry, what is your question?
So the subject property is capped at 5%. That would be below the 20th percentile, as you're indicating. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So when I look at the other capitalization rate evidence that the city provides here, and we look at the 3 main commercial brokerages in the city, Colliers, CBRE, Cushman Wakefield, that are provided, and we look at the cap rate ranges, I don't consider the subject property to be a Class A property for reasons I'll explain. But even if we look at it as Class A, we have multi-tenant for Colliers ranging from a low of 5.75 to 6.5, 5.5 to 6.5 for CBRE, and 5.25 to 5.75 for Cushman Wakefield. Why would the city have a cap rate that would be lower than what the main market participants would be indicating would be kind of the peak of the market?
Was that a question? We definitely felt that with a new building, it provided low risk.
Okay, I will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Cross, questions for the assessor?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
Yeah, I have just a couple. So if I look at page 1 of your evidence, you show 6 units. And if I look at page 14, I only see 5 units. Am I missing something on page 14? Am I missing a unit? Am I missing a unit?
You are correct. I was looking at that as well. And no, there is that was an error. It is 5 premises. You are correct.
Okay, so that brings the average somewhere closer to the average of the units you've used in your comparables then.
Correct.
And if I can maybe repeat a little bit of what Trevor has said, is it sounds like you've gone into functioning malls in the city, different areas of the city, and you've selected a unit out of that mall to use as a comparison that has a similar square footage. Am I correct in that?
Correct.
Okay. And we covered the age. No, I'm fine. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. I just have a couple. We'll stay with the rent comparables for now. As Mr. Whitbread pointed out, these are units within a larger complex. I just wondered if any of these complexes would have had 2 or 3 other units similar in size that would have lease starts and terms within the reference date as well. Did you look at that at all?
They did have very recent leases.
Well, these ones do, but for instance, 1389 Niagara Road East, I believe there's several units there. Did you look to see whether there are others in that immediate complex that would also give us some indication of the value in the reference date?
I did not, no.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was the 3% expenses. Can you explain what that is and the logic behind that?
As per our model, our market model generated that.
The model generated that, but what does that encompass? Do you know what components of that there are?
I don't.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Smith, when you're ready, we'll hear your evidence, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to start by making a, sorry, we're on Dougal. I had the wrong property pulled up here on my PDF. I'm back on track now. So 911 Dugald is a new build kind of infill project in that Mission Industrial area of St. Boniface Industrial. So if you go to my page number 6, you can get the location of the subject property within the city. So it is in St. Boniface Industrial. It's not, and it is on Dougal, but it's on the west side of Lagimodiere and well into the heavier industrial area that is situated there. So when we look at some of the comparables that both the city and I provide, they're in more built out industrial areas, cleaner, etc. The subject property area in the subject property itself is in M3 zoned area, so that comes along with the heavier industrial uses, which if we look at, I have included the statement regarding that, I believe, in this particular, it might be in my other brief. Anyway, M3 is a zoning that allows for heavier industrial uses, more external storage, noxious uses that provide or that create, gases, other external effects on the environment in the area. So that's the area it's within. It's one of the heavier industrial areas of the city of Winnipeg. Both of our properties today are actually within that area. So the subject The subject property, while being new, is built within that particular area. If we skip forward to my page number 3, you can see a bit of background on the property. So it was built in 2023, so there is no income and expense for it as of the submission date. We've included the detail for that in our brief. Sits on 1.4 acres and has just under a 4.5 to 1 land to plan area ratio. All of the loading on site is grade level, and one portion of the exterior loading is paved up to the end of the building, and then from there to the back of the site, it is gravel surfaced. So you have an exterior photo on page number 4. Site being shown on page number 5. Now, obviously, that's not the newest aerial, as we don't have access to those as the city does. This is the dimensions of the site with the previous building on site shown on page number 5. So let's move forward into the valuation itself, beginning on page number 9. So as a new build property, obviously they're looking to maximize the rent that they can achieve in that property. They have professional leasing for the property, utilizing a very well-known commercial agent to lease their property up. And the maximum that they were able to achieve in the marketplace as of renting the space in late 2023 was $10.40 a square foot. Now, as of this particular time period, they had 2 leases in place for a 10-year time span at a rental rate of $10.40 a square foot. Now, this is obviously lower than what the city had projected. If you have a new build property, obviously you're not going to undershoot on the rent. You need to maximize your return. You know what you have. The market likes new. They will be willing to pay the maximum that you can achieve for such a property. That amount is $10.40 a square foot. If they could have got more, they would have charged more for it in the beginning. The remainder of the property remained vacant as of that time frame. Moving on to comparables, the bottom of our page 9, we provide those for you. We're looking again for properties that are the most comparable to the subject, most recent leases, etc. They will vary somewhat in location, etc., but generally we're looking for size of the unit, location, amenities, ceiling heights, all of these things. So our first comparable is on Sturgeon. It's a lease from 2021, 5-year term, just over $10 per square foot for just under 6,000 square feet. The photo of the property is shown on the following page. You can see that it has a fairly high ceiling height, in fact, in excess of the subject. I don't have the specific number on that, but you can get a sense of that from the photo there. Number 2, we also have property in Terracon Place, $9 a square foot, beginning in 2015 for a 7-year lease term. So it's a little dated, I will grant you that. That particular rate will have come up somewhat since then. It's probably a little north of 10, but probably in the same range as we're talking about. Just under 10,000 square feet, 26-foot wall height. Now that would be a consistent 26 wall height from one end of the unit to the other, not 18 to 24 feet. So what that means is users are able to utilize the warehouse space for more stacking of product, etc. So they get more utility out of the space, therefore they're willing to pay more for it. Number 3, same property, I believe, as the city used on Wilkes. 2020 lease over a 5-year term for $9.50 a square foot. That is a very recent build. In fact, I think the city's evidence shows it as being a 2005 build. The photo of that property is on page 11. The bottom of page 10, incidentally, will show you what Terracon Place looks like. Certainly of a different scale and level of amenity and visual than the subject property. Page number 11 gives you, at the top, gives you a photo of the Wilkes property. As you can see, there's 2 buildings on site, fully paved. It does have dock and grade level loading, levelers, etc. for that particular property. And our final one is on Red Fife, which is in RM, immediately adjacent to the city of Winnipeg. It's where the new developments are happening. You get these high cube, modern industrial flex warehouse spaces, high ceiling heights, excellent loading, dock and grade, all the amenities. And we have a rent there of $10.75 a square foot. Now, that is a good comparable in terms of showing what you would get for $10.75 a square foot versus what you get at the subject property. So the $10.40 that they're achieving is the absolute maximum that they could get in the marketplace, when you can go in the market and pay $10.75 for the property we see at the bottom of page number 11. So we're using $10.40 a square foot, the in-place rental rate, as our rent for the entire property. Vacancy, there was obviously vacancy in the property as it's new built. We're deferring to the 3%, as we are with the expense allowance at 3% and the shortfall at $4 a square foot. Now, we can move on to capitalization rate, and this is a fairly critical component. As shown in the city's evidence, there is, the city doesn't have direct industrial capitalization rates for individual properties being shown, number 1. But when you do look at the comparable evidence that they provide from the various brokerages, none of them show a low end of 5%. Now, looking at our evidence on page number 14, you can see that Colliers is indicating a cap rate range of 5.75% to 6.5% for Class A investment grade property, and 6 to 7% for Class B assets. Now, what is a Class A asset? Well, skip back up to page number 11 and property on Red Fife at the bottom. That is a Class A asset. So that's not what we're looking at. Property is significantly under scale with relation to that. It does not have the ceiling height. It does not have dock and grade. It doesn't fully paved. It's in an M3 zoned area. It's not a Class A asset. So what is Class B? Colliers is indicating 6 to 7% for Class B. Similarly, Cushman Wakefield showing 5.25 to 5.75 for Class A. Again, subject is not, and 6 to 6.75 for Class B assets. Now, we then provide our direct comps. These were purchased were investment purchases based on the in-place income and expense. And you can see that they are all generally within that close time frame to the reference date, 2021 to 2022. They'll vary in terms of whether they're single tenant or multi-tenant, but they all had good leases extending into the future in them. And you can see the capitalization rate ranges from 5.8% up to 6.4%, with the bulk of them being between 6.1 and 6.4. If First one, 365 Black Diamond. This is a publicly reported sale by the purchaser. Sale price is there, considerably larger than the subject, obviously, different animal entirely. But what this shows you is that this is what a national level investment industrial investor would pay for a very quality asset. Now, this is shown on the following page at the top, 365 Black Diamond. It is the FedEx distribution center, very long-term lease with a very quality tenant, good quality tenant, and they paid 6.4%. That extends well into the future, that lease. So the security is there, 6.4 for that asset. We then have property more the size of the subject on Hutchings, 2022 sale for a single tenant at 6.2%. Again, the photo is shown on page 15. Again, this is a multi-tenant property built in 1980, but very good quality property in St. Boniface Industrial Park itself. So the main industrial park, which is largely multi-tenant, very well groomed, etc. If we look at the sale date there, 2021, 5.8%. Photo is shown at the top of page 16. It's a two building property on a site, mix of dock and grade level loading, multi-tenant. So that's a pretty straightforward one. And we have two properties on King Edward, both selling in 2022 at 6.1 and 6.5%. King Edward being, of course, Route 90 out by the airport and Polo Park. So those properties are shown as well. So what would be an appropriate cap rate for the subject property? Well, as the city said, yes, it is a new property. It is it's achieving good leases. It does have reasonable wall height. It does have a partially paved loading court. It doesn't have dock and grade loading. It doesn't have built out mezzes, etc. It's within that heavy M3 area. So you take all of these things into account, and I would place it towards the lower end of the cap rate range that we're seeing for Class B properties. Again, given the size, etc., that is what we're looking at. So we've gone to the very low end of the range at 6% in our valuation. Now, that is summarized on page number 18. You can see the in-place $10.40 a square foot. No changes to the other parameters except for the cap rate, which gives us our final value of $2,187,000. And in the addenda, we have provided the most recent income and expenses. Of course, there wasn't an I&E as of the reference date because the building didn't exist at that time. That is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rockney, questions for the applicant?
Yes, just a few. I did want to make a comment beforehand in regards to the income and expense questionnaire provided. I would ask that there be no weight on it due to it being post-reference. I did want to look over the comparables on page 9. And in looking at the comparables provided, looks like you were aiming for the full premise leasable space, which...
No. I'm sorry to interrupt, but no, that's not the case.
The number 4, looks like that one, the area space is quite high. Probably comparable to that whole premise leasable space. Am I correct?
So number 4 on page number 9.
Correct.
Yes, so the unit that we're showing there, 16 plus thousand square feet. If you skip down to the image of the property on the bottom of page number 11, no, that's only, I believe that's only one unit, perhaps 2 units of this particular building that we're showing. It's a multi-tenant property.
Okay, so that would probably be your best comparable there.
No, we have a range of comparables as shown. That one, essentially what we're showing is the very top end of the market and why the subject is only able to achieve the 1040 at maximum for their particular property. That was the point of showing that. So it's not that it's the most comparable to the subject. It's not. That's the peak of the market.
And looking at your page 4, the comparables to your cap rates, would you agree that your number 1, the area is 10 times the size of the subject property?
Yes, I pointed that out in my description of it. It's obviously significantly larger. What I'm showing there is that this again is a Class A property with a very long-term quality tenant with an excellent covenant. You're essentially buying a bond at that point. So it's you have a national investor willing to pay 6.4% on the open market for that property. It's not that it's the same as the subject. It's that this is what the market sees as being the peak.
I do agree with the age for that one. I've noticed that all the other comparables, the ages aren't close to the subject property.
Yes, that would be the most recent of construction. Obviously, the issue with getting sale comps or investment sale comps where they're newly constructed is that very few newly built assets trade for obvious reasons.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, questions for the applicant?
Sure, yes. Trevor, you just made a statement. If you could go back to that statement about for obvious reasons.
Yes, well, if you are
sorry, let me ask you a question and then I'm not putting you on the spot. So
yeah.
For obvious reasons, what do you mean by that, Trevor?
Right. So if you are a industrial developer and you've reviewed the market, determined that a development is viable, done all of your due diligence, priced out the construction, built the property, gone through the exercise of tenanting it and putting property management, et cetera, in place, you have a long-term investment horizon. You're not going to build it and sell that asset in a short period of time because you need to recoup your investment in the upfront costs of building that facility. That's one of the reasons that the cost of the construct that the city often brings into play is not a direct relation to what the market value of a property is, because the cost to construct does not translate to what the income potential and capitalized value of a property is. So when you see the 2.7 in relation to what the property is actually worth, it takes longer for a property to exceed that initial construction. A lot of that has to do with financing, et cetera, right? So yes, the properties cost more to build, but you're able to make that work by financing the property.
Okay, so looking at those comments then, and I'm jumping over to page 14 now on your evidence
Sure.
and your capitalization rate comparables. And I think it's been indicated by the assessor that they're significantly larger than the 13,000 square foot property that we're looking at here.
Yes.
In fact, 248,000 is way large compared to this. But I may have trouble characterizing these comments properly, Trevor, bear with me. So does economy of scale and the comments you made about risk with a new building come into play when you're looking at cap rates in this context for this building? Brand new building, small size versus really large size building. Even if we look at the 50,000 or 27,000, those are still much larger than the property we're dealing with. Now, do those elements affect cap rate in your mind?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I know that I tend to go on too much about too many details, so sometimes I skip some things, and that would certainly be one of them in this case. So the property that you're indicating there, 365 Black Diamond Boulevard, yes. Obviously, considerably larger at 248,000 square feet, built in 2020, and was essentially and sold the following year. Now, what you're looking at there, and I forget the exact length of term, but I believe you're looking at a 20-year lease for, a AAA covenant international level tenancy FedEx, right? So, as I said, it's like buying a bond. Your certainty there is virtually guaranteed. So, you're as an astute, large-scale institutional investor, you're willing and able to pay a much lower cap rate for that than you would for something that's a bit sketchier. FedEx isn't going anywhere. Your business model has been proven. It will go for the rest of the time. You can be pretty guaranteed in your investment there. Now, it's 248,000 square feet. So you only have a certain subsection of investors that are able and willing to buy those, but they're very aggressive, and they will pay the market peak for what they're acquiring when it's exactly like what they want, such as a very long-term lease to a AAA covenant tenant such as FedEx. Now, is that the same thing as our property exactly? No, it's not, and I'm not saying that it is. So there will be many more local investors that would look at a property such as our property that we're dealing with here today. And yes, it will draw a lower capitalization rate for that, and that will. We have reflected that in what we've chosen at the 6% capitalization rate. So, if you look at our other comparables there, for instance, the multi-tenant property on Big Ann, yes, it's a little bit older, but the number of tenants that are looking for space, such as that particular that are available in that particular property, are far more numerous than they are for tenants of the size of Black Diamond or much larger scale single tenant properties. So the risk is very low on that, which is reflected in the cap rate of 5.8%. Now, that's a larger property again than the subject, but it is much better located within the actual St. Boniface Industrial Park as developed by the city of Winnipeg. So that would be slightly superior to the subject. There's also dock and grade loading there. There's 2 buildings on site, fully paved court, etc. So that is probably our best comparable in terms of the ones that we're looking at. But again, the market participants are indicating the ranges that I provided there. So, and the evidence that we have shows that 6% would be essentially the low end of what we would be looking at, and certainly nothing approaching 5%. We haven't seen anything like that in the marketplace.
Can you perhaps characterize the risk issues on this property that we're dealing with, given its newness, given the relatively, I guess, average size of units for rent, and the investor pool that you mentioned, a much bigger investor pool for a building of this size than of those other sizes. You sort of pull that together?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say, so let me just make a quick comment there. So not necessarily a larger investment pool than for our sale numbers 2 through 5. If you look at the size of those properties and the amounts paid, those are all within your typical range of what a local investor would be looking at. So it's not, it doesn't fall outside of that range. So it's well within that sphere that we're looking at. Number 1 is a different animal, obviously. Now, the investment risk for the subject. Well, you have a new build, so yes, typically you're not going to be looking at any wear and tear issues as far as replacement. So your investment into the building and repair and that will be very low initially until that rises over time. So that's a good thing. That's a plus, obviously. The ceiling height it's variable, frankly. People don't build 18 foot anymore. This one ranges on one side from 18 foot to 24 foot on the other, 24 foot, being a much more reasonable new build height. Typically you see, 24 foot, 28 foot, 30 foot these days being built. So it's okay on that front, but not ideal. It's a multi-tenant building. That's a plus because you spread your risk over the entire property rather than have a single tenant. If they leave, you have a fully vacant building. If a single tenant or if one tenant leaves out of your multi-tenant building, you only have a partially vacant building. So you have less risk that way in comparison to a single tenant. Now, we also have multi-tenant properties shown here in our sale comparables on page number 14. The other thing to keep in mind is the location. So we're not talking St. Boniface Industrial Park or any other main industrial park in the city. If you drive through Mission Industrial, so if you go down Marion and head north from there into Mission Industrial, it's heavy industrial, as we'll see in the next property. And the uses and the noxious nature of that simply have an impact on tenants and or purchasers, owner occupiers that may want to move into that area. So the draw to that area is less than it is to others. So it's new build, but it's new build in an M3 zoned area in Mission Industrial, where you have the rendering plants and the fat processing plants and all of the issues that go along with that. It drives.
Understand. I think you've gone through that in your previous evidence, Trevor. I'm sorry to dwell on this, but I think it'll help us. Your comments will help us in looking at the next property as well, and we'll probably be a little bit more speedy on that one. Appreciate your information. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Cross, questions for the applicant?
Just with regards, you said that the space that you had in the subject property has been rented out by a professional company, like a property management company. Is that correct?
No, by a commercial real estate agent.
Okay, and it's an arm's length, like it's not you.
Oh yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, your page 9, you have subject property leases starting 2023. Was that prior to April 1st?
No, and so this is the issue that comes up when you have a property that is newly built after the date, but obviously has to be assessed for the new cycle. So the rents that I show were struck in 2023. I cannot recall right now if they were prior to April 1. If we zoom down to the income and expense form that I've provided at the very back on one of the last pages, they were done in September of 2023, as that's when they were given occupancy as far as being able to lease it out.
Okay, so they are actually post-reference. I appreciate that you're
They
providing them because they are 23 and a new build 23, but okay, but we will have to give that the weight, appropriate weight that we think.
Absolutely, and Mr. Chair, if I may just say, I'm 100% supportive of the post-reference thing. What you have in these situations where the property is after the fact, though, is that, well, so what do you then provide? There are no other new builds in Mission Industrial, so this is what they're achieving in the right year, slightly after. Well, it is what it is. It can't really be ignored.
Okay, thank you. And 3% expenses, I'm assuming that's the non-recoverables that you're agreeing with the assessment department?
We are deferring to the city's 3% in this instance.
Okay, and what do you consider to be non-recoverable expenses?
I was really hoping we wouldn't get into a long discussion regarding non-recoverables, Mr. Chair.
I don't want a long discussion. I just wanted to hear what do you think non-recoverables should include, what they should incorporate.
Non-recoverables should incorporate the wide range of costs that the landlord bears, which I have not, I believe, included in my brief, but it is more extensive than what the city considers.
Okay, thank you. So my only questions, Mrs. Assessor, do you wish a summation?
No, I do not.
Mr. Smith, summation?
No, that's fine, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. At this point, we're going to take a short brief. I am still experiencing some technical difficulties. Hopefully we can work that out. It's 10 o'clock now, so if we can reconvene at 10:10, please. Thank you. I will call the meeting back to order. Hopefully the technical issues are resolved and we can continue on with our docket. Number 10, Dawson Road North, roll number 06-0155-0000. So when you're ready, Ms. Assessor, we'll hear your evidence, please.
Mr. Chair, file number 24-4030, roll number 06-0515500000, address is Dawson Road North. We are defending the assessed value of $2,036,000 for the 2025 roll year based on the reference date of April 1, 2023. It consists of 2 buildings with 1 story. It has an overall year built of 1980. The wall height is actually 22 feet with a leasable area of 20,480 square feet. The land to plan area is 6.40. My recommendation is to confirm the assessed value of $2,036,000 with the pending municipal board appeal for 2018, 2020, and 2023. If I might turn your attention to page 8. We provided map views showing its location. It is situated on the east side of the city in the Mission Industrial Area near Archibald Street and Mission Street, off of Planget Street or Messier Street. Aerial views are on page 9 through 11, in which we can see the exterior of the property. And on page 11, the many loading bays. You'll find our income workup on page 4. The one premise of 20,480 square feet with the rent of $6.89 per square foot provides a potential rent of $141,107. We reduced that by a vacancy loss of 3% plus expenses at 3%, with the shortfall at $4 per square foot. This gives us the net operating income of $130,310. We've capitalized that at 6.40%, in which generates our $2,036,094, in which we rounded down to our final value of $2,036,000. On page 3 has our rent comparables, and they are actual net rents from the market in which our model is based off of. We've provided 6 rent comparables with the lease starting in 2015 to 2021. Area range from 15,019 to 24,981 square feet. Wall height range from 17 to 26 feet. Year built of 1964 to 1982. And a net rent of $6.15 per square foot to $7.50 per square foot. You'll find our capitalization rates on page 6, in which provides the industrial range of 5.35 at the 20th percentile to 7.30 at the 80th percentile. Our cap rate of 6.4% falls in this range. And on page 12 is the property income and expense questionnaire provided to us, advising fully owner occupied. And based on the evidence we provided, we believe that the assessed value of $2,036,000 to be fair and equitable, and ask for it to be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, questions for the assessor?
Yeah, just a few, and I'll keep it brief. I didn't ask this for the first one, but for our 2 properties today, given workload at the assessment department, I'm assuming that you would not have time to inspect either of these properties?
No, that's correct. We would like to.
Okay. So in looking at the
Sorry, not to interrupt you. We actually did inspect the previous one, 911 Dugald, due to inputting their the business.
Right.
But not this one.
So you're showing the wall height between 20 and 30 feet, varying between that, correct?
Correct.
And just to clarify that, so if we skip down to your photos, pages say 9 and 10 there, the 30-foot portion of the building is limited to the newest portion of the building at the rear of the site, correct?
It appears so.
Okay. All right. Just look at the comparables briefly, the lease comparables that is. So page number 3, and I recognize the difficulty in getting good quality comparables. So the first comparable, 55 Trache, this is an M2 zoned property in Fort Garry Industrial, just off of Chevrier. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And number 2, 1733 St. Matthews, rather. This is at essentially the intersection with Route 90 in the Polo Park area. Is that accurate?
Yes. Oh, sorry. I said yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that.
Okay.
My mistake. 1520 Inkster. This is more of a retail orientation on Inkster with a carpet store, a solar panel store, and adjacent to a Tim Hortons. Would that be fair to say?
Not quite sure about the Tim Hortons, but yes, everything else is correct.
Okay. And 2110, pardon me, 2110 Notre Dame Avenue. This is owned by a national real estate investment trust, large multi-tenant facility, dock and grade level loading, paved loading immediately adjacent to Red River College. Is that accurate?
Here, so yes.
Okay. So none of these are in the immediate area as the subject, correct? They're kind of in the different areas of the city?
Correct.
Okay, thank
As
you.
you mentioned, they're difficult to find.
That's correct. Here they are. So let's move forward. I think our other point of differentiation is capitalization rate. So as I'd mentioned in the first property, the city hasn't provided any direct evidence of capitalization sales as far as presenting a chart of individual transactions. Is that correct? Okay. And the addenda, I think, is just the I and E. Yes, that's fine. Those are all of my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Cross, questions for the assessor?
No, good, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
I have none, thank you.
Okay, just curiosity more than anything. Why is there no civic address assigned to this property? Do you know why that is?
I know it underwent a replot, but as far as I know, it's zero Dawson Road North.
Okay, so if I look at your photos, starting I guess on page 9, and I'm assuming the orange line designates the roll number or the area for the roll number. So there seems to be a gap. Is that a right of way that's
A little off.
there?
The orange is a little off. It goes more upwards, so it has all those, all the buildings.
No, I would understand that, but I guess if you look on the next page, now that sort of what I'm assuming is perhaps a right of way is at the top of the page.
Correct.
So is that a right of way or is that part of the parcel?
Sorry, what is your question?
If that's a right of way or if that's actually part of the parcel that's being assessed. If you're not sure, that's fine. You can.
Sorry,
I'll accept. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't give the wrong information.
And we've covered the comps as to why there's none in the immediate area or even in St. Boniface proper because of the difficulty of finding properties that are at least, I'm assuming most of them are owner occupied, this type of property. Is that fair to say that's why it's difficult to find comparables?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Smith, we'll hear from you, please.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So to answer your question about the address, so in previous cycles, so this is Nelson River Construction, that is the owner occupant here. They have two side-by-side properties there that essentially form one property. And they were both previously identified as 101 Dawson with different roll numbers. There have been been some change in the boundaries of those parcels. So I guess the city took it upon themselves to change the physical address at that time, but the roll number remains the same.
Okay, thank you.
So that is the background there. So subject property we're dealing with, 0 Dawson Road. We have a photo from the frontage from the street on Dawson, looking at the property on our cover page. You can see the front of the building there and the beginnings of the compound on the right side of the chain link fence. And I'd like to make a slight correction in what I've provided to you there. My final value is actually $1,685,000. That's a correction to the expense allowance that was included in the brief, but was not updated when it was inserted. So it's a slight adjustment, but I'd like to make that correction. Skipping forward to page number 3. Some background on the property, obviously as referred to by the City of Winnipeg. We as the appellant have the property under appeal at the municipal board. There's a backlog there, and we're working our way through those particular cases at this point. But you can see the appeal history and values that were decided, all of which have been appealed by the appellant. The property again is in Mission Industrial. It is zoned M3 heavy manufacturing, built in 83, and we're looking at a leasable area of 20,480 square feet. Some description of the actual construction details themselves on the bottom of the page there. We can move forward into photos. They're often of more value, I find, in these cases. So we have exterior at the top of page 4, another at the bottom. That's looking at it from, well, we'll call it the right side. I think that would be the southeast, looking at the building. So you can see the newest portion of the building at the rear. That is the only 30-foot portion of the building. Remainder of the building is at that 20-foot height level and was originally built back in 80, I believe. More of the exterior yard area, so you can see that we're not looking at a paved loading court, etc., other than that little bit at the entrance to the new portion of the building. Some of the exterior yard storage, and then we get into the interior of the building. There's a truck wash and maintenance bay in the rear. That's the 30-foot section that you're looking at there. Then we get into the main portion. This is the 20-foot ceiling height where they maintain their construction equipment, essentially. That is what you're looking at. That's what the majority of the building is on page number 7 and page number 8. Those are that's the typical use. So heavier industrial use fitting with the zoning of the particular area, and then just some of the office areas. Obviously not new or updated. So description of the site on page number 10. As you can see, it's an irregularly shaped boundary. As to your question about whether that's a right of way or not, I don't actually have the specific answer to that. My estimation would be that it was perhaps either a rail spur at one point or intended as a laneway, perhaps on original plans. But I don't have the real answer for you. But that's kind of what it looks like. The property on the bottom of that particular image on page 10 is also owned by Nelson Rock. Now, it's we're valuing them individually, obviously. So you have a very irregularly shaped parcel with access actually through that we'll call it right of way. onto the subject site, and the majority of the exterior or of the yard area is towards the back of the site, with no other access points possible to the rear of the site. So it's not as though the property could be subdivided, etc. The location shown on the following page, number 11. And one thing to point out, and this is again in regard to M3 zoned properties, in some instances you have instances of former landfills within these areas. We look at the bottom of page 11. This is a diagram taken from a City of Winnipeg document indicating former landfill areas in that Mission Industrial area. The number 2 portions there are essentially adjacent across the railway from the subject property. So just pointing out the type of area that we're operating within. M3 zoning is identified on page number 12 with, pardon me, the intent being to allow for heavy industrial development of a potentially noxious nature, as I've already referred to. Let's skip forward to the valuation. So it is owner occupied, and we have a total of 20,500 square feet leasable area. So we're looking for larger tenancies in the City of Winnipeg. The challenge, of course, for an M3 zoned heavy industrial property is that there aren't a lot of leases of these properties out there. So we do the best that we can to identify properties in the area or of the size of comparable utility. So our first property, 993 Century, is well, it essentially fronts, well, it is on Route 90 in that St. James industrial area. 2020 lease for ever so slightly smaller unit. 20-foot ceiling height, so the same as the subject for the majority. This is a multi-tenant facility, and they're achieving a rent of $4.60 a square foot there on a short-term lease. So that would change things as well. Numbers 2 and 3 are in the immediate area, about half a block from the subject property. This is multi-tenant property built in 1989. Both of the units obviously are significantly smaller than the subject, but the ceiling height is the same at 20 foot. So in that way, the utility is the same, just for a smaller industrial user. New leases in 2023 over a longer term, and we're looking at $537 and $680 per square foot. 550 Archibald, also in the immediate area. Fronting on a more main thoroughfare. And we have a 2019 lease for a little over 10,000 square feet at $7 per square foot for property built in 1988. Similar wall height, slightly higher. And finally, one in Omans Creek for very similar area, leased in 2021. This is a multi-tenant building, very well tenanted, large local industrial owner, well leased, well managed, and it drew a rate of $6.40 for a long-term lease for that unit. Pardon me. Back in 2021. So the leases being between 2019 and 2023, up to date, 3 of them in the immediate area. And you can see the rates that they go for. Now, are they directly comparable, apples to apples to the subject? Well, these are generally more multi-tenant facilities. They will have better visibility, better draw for tenancies of a higher order, essentially more office space, maybe more of a quasi-retail view in at least one of the instances. Let's skip forward to the The photos, 993 Century is the first one on page 15. Probably all familiar with that building. As you head north on Century, it's on the curve. Large multi-tenant facility owned by a large national investor, well leased and managed. 400 to Ren. This is numbers 2 and 3 with the 2 leases. Same wall height, much smaller units, obviously, and you can see the range that they have. But that is half a block from the subject, and you can see the rents that they were achieving in the $5 to $650 range, I think it was, for a much smaller units, obviously. So with a much more standard use, so many more tenancies for property of that type typically than for 20,000 square feet. Moving on, 550 Archibald. This is fronting right on Archibald. Very good visibility. One of the units in there, not the one that we provided. One of the units, I believe, was a kids play center, so that you can see the type of tenancy that they're able to draw in a facility like that. Very different than what we'd be looking at for the subject. And finally, 199 Omans, just a typical multi-tenant facility in Omans Creek. So our rental rate range is from a low of $460 up to a high of $640 per square foot. Now, we're looking at 20,000+ square feet, heavy industrial use, older building, well used, with one smaller addition at the back. We feel that a rate of $625 per square foot is more than appropriate or more than adequate, perhaps slightly aggressive in valuing the subject. So that's what we've used for it. Our other parameters mirror the city at 3% expenses, or rather 3% vacancy, 3% expense allowance, and $4 per square foot shortfall. Please excuse the failure to delete the material on that page from the prior property we were dealing with. So let's skip forward to cap rate, exact same information that we were dealing with previously. And again, you can see the ranges from Colliers and Cushman and Wakefield Stevenson. There's no way that this property would be a Class A property. So it's solidly Class B. And we're looking at between 6 and 7% for Colliers in their capitalization rate publication as of the relevant date, and Cushman Wakefield indicating 6 to 6.75% for Class B assets. Now, heavy industrial facilities such as this would be a stretch to call them Class B as well. There are leases out there for some of them, obviously, but there are many fewer users for heavy industrial such as this. Anyway, the information is the same. Our comparables are the same. And each of these are investment properties. So we're looking at a range of a low, very low, of 5.8% up to a high of 6.4% for, as stated, the blue chip bond property, essentially, that 365 Black Diamond Boulevard represents. Now, the others in that 6.1, 6.2, 6.5% range. For, again, lower risk M2 zone multi-tenant properties typically. Now, that is not what the subject property is. There's certainly a higher risk involved in leasing out a property such as this. It's a single tenant, obviously, much dirtier use, lower number of users for a property of this type, and more issues that would come along with the use of the site versus, say, a normal M2 multi-tenant facility. So the risk profile is certainly higher. You also have again, the adjacent former landfill site across the tracks from the subject property. So let's move on to my page 22 and the summarization of cap rate. So again, we're in the heavy industrial area. The rendering plant, the fat processing plant, the noxious nature of those and many other uses in the subject area makes it much less attractive for users as well as less attractive for investors due to the actual and perceived risks associated with these properties. We've already discussed the less tenants, so therefore more of a risk of a property remaining vacant. So we have used a capitalization rate of 7% in our analysis. Again, this is only slightly above the top end of the range that we were looking at in our direct comparables that we provided, but within the range of the top end of the Collier's range of 6 to 7% for what they term Class B properties. So certainly appropriate for the subject. I would not compare this directly to the apples to apples to the comparables that we provided. It is an inferior investment to those particular comparables provided. And due to the scarce nature of sales of that type, it's fair to apply the capitalization rate of 7%, not due to the scarce nature, but you can see that intuitively the capitalization rate will be higher for the reasons stated. So our final market value, as I stated, is $1,685,000, not $1,668,000. And the addenda simply includes the income and expense for the property. That is my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Darrakani, questions for the...
Yes, thank you. On page 14, I had a question in regards to the two you have for 400 Turenne.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed the start lease of 2023. Do you know if they had a like this new lease? What is the do you happen to know the exact start date of the lease?
I don't believe I wrote that in there. I don't recall the exact start date of the lease, just that it was in 2023 and negotiated, ahead of that as well.
Okay, because those are the net rents that I was able to find with their original lease in 1994 for one and 2010 for the other one.
Yes, so, and I'll speak to that. So when you look at and this is largely related to the City of Winnipeg's income and expense form, the original start dates of those leases were, as you mentioned, whatever the particular start date was, 2010, 90, whatever. Obviously, those leases did not run for 30 years, so they've been renegotiated over time, and each of these was redone in the time frame that we've presented in our chart.
On page 18, I haven't had the chance to look at your comparables closely. But again, looking at the first one being 10 times the size, would you say that the other 4 are more similar to the subject?
I would say they're more similar, but they're presented for different reasons. Again, we've talked extensively about this. The first property there on Black Diamond represents essentially the peak of the market for a national investor and the lowest cap rate that they would pay for a bond type property. So that is the purpose of including that. It's not that it's directly the same as the subject, but the others would be more similar in size and utility. Although, as stated, 3 of them are multi-tenant facilities.
I did notice that the cap rates for all the comparables do seem to be in line with our cap rate.
Well, that may be the case, but I've discussed the difference between our capitalization rates and those particular sales and buildings versus the subject property. We can cover that again, but I think I've gone over that quite a bit.
That's all. Thank you.
Those are all your questions then?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread?
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to scroll back if you don't mind. Sorry, I should have been there. So I'm looking at your page 14, your properties for comparing and the date built. Well, let me ask another question first.
Mhm.
When I look at the effective date of this building, it's 2014, built in 1956, I believe, 58. I see no evidence that talks about how it got from 1958 to 2014, Trevor. Do you have any information on that? What was done to bring it to that?
Yes, so it was, pardon me, it was built in stages essentially. So what I might suggest we do is, in my brief, if you flip to page number 10 would cover it, I guess, the site description. So property started, or rather the structure started in 1958. So that would be your front portion of the building there. You can see kind of the natural split lines on that. That's your 20-foot portion of the building. There's another either 20 or slightly higher portion that's just immediately behind that has a white roof line, relatively narrow. And then you have the larger addition at the back, which was built in 2014. And that's the only portion. That's the 30-foot portion of the structure. And
so that, if I look at that, there seemed to be like 1, 2, 3 demarcations, then a lower building, and then the large building you were just referencing. I'm not suggesting there were separate buildings, but they were maybe built at separate times.
Yes, certainly the front and the back were built at very different times, yes, 1958 and 2014.
So in effect, we're dealing with a building characterized as a 2014 building. And now I need to go back to your comparables, to page 14, I believe. And I look at when those buildings were built. 73, 89, 89, 88, and 79. Some 25 to 35 years younger than this building in effect. And yet you're bringing us rents. What do you? I guess you're comparing those rents to this building when they're quite a bit older, and if they were 2014 statute buildings, would their rent not be higher? So this is always the challenge in buildings like this, Mr. Whitbread, when you have multiple dates of construction. So the city's it's not a 2014 building. We only have that one portion of the building at the rear of the site that is the vehicle wash and repair bays that is built in 2014. The remainder of the building was built in 1958. So there's that front portion and the portion immediately behind it, which would be the 1958 structure. So that would you say that's about
an arbitrary number as to this is the date of the building? It's really not. You have 2 portions. So you have the 2014 and you have the 1958 essentially. So
would you say it's about half?
I don't have a breakdown of it, but I would think the older portion is ever so slightly larger than the newer portion, but I don't have a breakdown of those areas. But again, putting a date on that and saying, well, it's a blended 2008 or whatever it is, it really doesn't work like that. You have a 1958 building and a 2014. So when we put our comparables in place, what we're trying to do is look at size, location, utilities, amenities such as loading, yard storage, age of the building, obviously. That's typically what we look at. It's not always easy to come up with the perfect comps of the right size in the right area, etc.
Understood.
Yeah.
Even though we do have a 30-foot ceiling, I think I heard you say that on that new portion. Is that correct?
That's only on that very rear portion of the building. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cross, questions for the applicant?
Yeah, just clarification with your comparables for the cap rate. Were any or are any zoned the same way as the subject?
No, none of them. None of them, to my knowledge, are zoned M3. Certainly, and the only one I would be mildly unsure about would be 365 Black Diamond, because I didn't check it, but yeah. I don't believe it's M3 either. I think that has been changed to M2 in order to do that particular development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just clarification, Mr. Smith. I believe you stated when you were talking about the comparable rent range, you said they range from $460 to $640. Were you discounting the other two on Terrain at $680 and one at $7, or is that just a slip of the tongue, or are you?
My apologies. I think I was probably squinting a little bit when I was looking at that. So yes, you are correct. We have $680 and $7 per square foot, one on Terrain, one on Archibald. If you look at the comps, you can see why Archibald is $7 a square foot right. Versus what the subject would draw.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that you weren't discounting those as comparables. Okay. And no. I believe the assessor had stated in her presentation that there was an effective age of 1980. Maybe I can clarify that with the assessor. Is that correct? You said the effective age of the building is 1980?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Smith, would you agree that because it's a 1958 building and a 2014 building, 1980 might be more indicative of the age of the building itself, if you were to put an age to it?
Well, I want to be careful there. I wouldn't put an age to it. That's an internal mechanism that the city uses to put what they call an effective age on it, right? In order for comparison. What I would point out is that you have two portions of the building. Is 1980 more reasonable? Certainly, and I think both our sale and our lease comps compare well to that in terms of being around that age and or newer.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to just clarify, if I might, Mr. Chair.
Yes, certainly.
So if I look at the evidence provided by the assessor, it's very clear on the front page, page 1, 1980 to 2014. And I believe Mr. Smith also provided evidence that that new addition was built in 2014. So does that change the assessor's comment about 1980 being the effective date? Is it 1980? Is it 1980 to 2014, or is it 2014?
Thank you. That's a good question. We used an effective date of 1980 in total.
Even though your evidence says different.
Well, that's the range of the property of everything.
Okay. Thanks a lot. No further questions.
Thank you. Uh, do you desire a summation, Mrs. Assessor?
Nope, I do not. Thank you.
And Mr. Applicant, desire for a summation?
Just ever so briefly, as pointed out, a larger scale single tenant property of a heavy industrial use such as this would draw a lower lease rate as we've put on it, and the higher cap rate as we've put on it for the reasons stated. That's it. Thank you.
I thank you. Okay, I thank you both for your presentations today. We have heard all the items that are scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn off the stream and then we'll be in camera.
I thank you.